Distinguished judges, ladies and gentlemen, nice to see all of you again. Energy consumption has long been a concern for human beings all over the world. So the video we're going to deal with today focuses specifically on the energy consumption in houses and buildings. So I would like to explore the topic with my students. They are intermediate level non-English majors. And I would like to deal with the topic within one class period. First of all, I would like to share with you how I interpret the video itself. Roughly speaking, the video can be divided into three sections. Section 1 uses Colin's house as a personal case to introduce the problem, that is the energy consumption in houses. In fact, we have staggering figures here. All the houses and buildings in the US consume almost 40% of all the energy. And that leads naturally to the second part, the problem. Of course, the energy waste in houses. And here we find very specific illustration of the energy problems at Colin's houses. Actually, the video takes us into Colin's house. And the last section, of course, is the solution, ways to solve the problems. Mainly, it talks about two solutions. Solution number 1 is unplug, right? And solution number 2 is the solar panel as used in Levin's house. And that brings us to the second example, Levin's house. And we can see these two examples can form a very good comparison and contrast. So based on such analysis, I would say the focus and difficult points for this course would be the problem and the solution. Based on such consideration, I would set the following teaching objectives. First of all, in terms of knowledge, I have two aspects. First is linguistically, semantic vocabulary. All this vocabulary like freezer, heater, light bulb, solar panel, all this are related to our living environment as well as the equipment and energy saving, all this vocabulary. And the second is functional language. By that I mean the sentence structures and vocabulary we can talk about and we can use to present problems as well as to introduce solutions. So that would be the knowledge part. And the second about skill. Skill for listening, I would focus on predicting and note-taking. And here, to be more specific, predicting would focus on comparison and contrast. I will elaborate later. And note-taking would focus on comparison and contrast as well as problem-solution patterns. And the last one, awareness, of course. I hope through the class, my students will improve their awareness, enhance awareness to live an eco-friendly lifestyle, which is not just limited to our houses. Okay, so as for my teaching method, what I would say each teaching method has its own merits and strength. And to be specific for this course, I would apply the ideas introduced by British language expert Jeremy Hammer. He proposed engagement, study, activation as the essential learning elements. And I personally would add one last step, that is evaluation, because I think self-evaluation, reflection on the part of teachers and students are both important. Okay, now please allow me elaborate my teaching procedures in detail. First of all, let's come to engagement. Even before my students come to my class, I would invite them to do a survey. Take a look around your own house or your dormitory. What are the equipments or family devices that are consuming lots of energy? And by this, I will ask the students to make a list. When they make this list, I think they have to turn to dictionaries to search for the expressions for such equipments. So in that, I think my students will get both thematically and linguistically prepared for their next study. So when they come to my class as lead-in, I would like to first invite my students to present all the problems they found in the houses. And through this, we will build a network of all the vocabulary probably we can use in the following study section. And then I will also ask them to make a prediction. Here, I will present them pictures of both Colin's house and Levin's house. By looking at the pictures, can they predict what a regular house is like, what an eco-friendly house is like, and they can make comparison contrast, predict the possible differences there. And by doing this, I think they're prepared for the following study. Well, they will watch the video first, non-stop, and by this time we were focused on just one word, difference. So this time they'll watch from the beginning to the end, try to figure out the possible differences between the two kinds of houses. And later on we'll come to the more detailed study. This time we will just focus on two clips. Clip 1 is problem part. Clip 2 is solution. And in this section, they will have to know to use, note-taking to fill in a table which focus on the contrast between the two houses. They can note down some keywords as well as important numbers to indicate the very important differences. And then this will also lead us to the study of problem solution patterns, because I will invite my students to present, retell the problems, retell the solutions. In this, they will try to use the sentence structures. And then that will bring us to the activation. By activation, I mean the oral projection, speaking section. You see, we're always talking about train students' critical thinking, but I think critical thinking is not something abstract. It should be something very specific. So here I will focus on alternatives, try to find alternatives. So students will form groups, try to think about other possible problems in energy consumption in houses. And of course, they need also think about possible other alternative ways to solve the problems. And after their discussion, I will invite groups to present to me any other problems, any other solutions. And of course, at this section, they are required to use all the sentence patterns like there are problems in, there is something wrong with, there are ways to do something, possible solution could be, or thanks to something. So such structures could help them to present to me their ideas in a very clear manner. And of course, through this, we can also see the, the differences between the ideas of different groups. And of course, after the activation section, we'll come to the evaluation. Evaluation number 1 is in-class wrap-up. Here, I would like to invite all my students to make a summary themselves, to list all these problems we've mentioned throughout the class, and of course, correspondingly, all the problems we've mentioned in the class. By doing this, as a teacher, I can also tell whether my students have got all the main ideas in the class. And this evaluation, the summary, can also constitute a part of students' portfolio for my future evaluation feedback. And next, we will talk about the assignment. Actually, lots of Chinese people now are also trying to live in a very eco-friendly style. We find lots of such examples. Some people even try to get away from, urban living environment. They go to secluded areas, and some of them even developed apps to introduce such eco-friendly, living concepts. So for the assignment, I would ask my students to do, research on the energy consumption problems in Chinese houses. They can also use their pre-class survey as a starting point and go deeper, and also try to study all the Chinese eco-friendly living style and see what we can learn from the Chinese eco-friendly living style. You see, different areas probably will try to make different uses of different energies, because in the video we have solar energy, but maybe in other areas we can try to make use of, bioenergy, right? So which is suitable for the specific environment or conditions. So through this, I think my students will think more critically the problem and solutions. And of course, next class, they will be invited to the class to introduce to all of us their findings. So through this, I think my students will enhance their environmental friendly life living style as well as awareness. If they can do that, I would say I've achieved my purpose in this lesson. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, Professor.
Okay. From the video, we learned a problem and two solutions to that problem concerning environmental protection and eco-friendly homes. Okay. Now, if we focus on the solution part, either on the Cohen's home or the Loving's home, okay, can you recall how the materials are organized? In other words, when we analyze the overall structure of this video, we say it is a problem-solution structure, okay? So solution follows the problem. Now, if we focus on the solution part and focus on the more of the details, so let's see how the materials in the solution part, in each of the solution part, how are they organized?
Okay.
Yeah, the pattern of organization. Okay.
The pattern of organization?
Yes.
I would say, I think, first of all, as for Colin's house, what you see, we have two personal case studies here, two examples. So first of all, the key point is the organization of the solution part is there is a contrast. So the contrast can introduce to us the two different solutions. And the second thing is, as for specifically one case study after another, I think we follow, as I recall, I think we follow a more, it's more like we have specific details first, and then we have generalizations later on. So because they introduce all the different devices and equipment one by one, and then they make a summary or generalization that those devices consume lots of energy, and then introduce to us the final solution. So I think that is basically like the patterns, more specific detailed items listed there, and finally leads to the generalization. And then naturally we have a contrast, and then we have the second case. That's pretty much my understanding as I recall.
Okay, thank you. When we move on to your teaching design, you focused in two places the use of problem solution patterns. Okay, so can you introduce to us some of the what you consider to be typical sentence patterns that are used in describing the problem solution kind of this kind of function? You said that you want to. This is one of your teaching objectives. You want to introduce this function to the students, and you want to introduce some of the sentence patterns that are typically used.
Yes.
So can you name some of these sentence patterns?
Okay, of course. First of all, I think we can find some sentence patterns in the video. And second, as a teacher, I would supply some of the sentence patterns to my students. So as for problems, I think we can have, there is something wrong, and there are problems, or the problems lie in, and there are certain things to be, if there are things to be improved, that could be. So I think this kind of structures can be used to describe problems. As for solutions, I think we have, there are many ways to do something, and possible solution could be, and there are alternative plans. So I think we have a bunch of such expressions, and these are pretty much what I can think of right now. So I would like to introduce that to my students. But of course, if students can come up with even more during their discussion preparation, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.